Today's webinar is...
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's webinar is presented by Dr. John Passante. Dr. John is an industry veteran with over 30 years of experience, including marketing and sales, manufacturing, and organizational development. John was the president and CEO of Brinton Productions, as well as the president and CEO of the Organizational Development Group Incorporated. He is an adjunct professor at Northwood University and the University of the Aftermarket, and also serves as a motivational speaker and has published many articles on leadership, communication, and motivation. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. John. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and I'm honored and excited to spend some time with you all this afternoon on a spring day. At least it's semi-spring in New England, but it's only 37 degrees here, but that's a topic for another day. I'm going to focus on something that's important to all of you. I'm going to talk about you. And some of you that met me as I travel the aftermarket know that I'm a strong proponent of being a lifelong learner. And as you think about yourself as your brand, one of the commitments I would ask you to make to yourself is to commit to be a learner, to learn every day, every day, every day, because that's the differential between the people you're competing in the marketplace, and that's your value proposition, and that's what you bring to your employer, and also by learning you enrich your life. And the other thing I would ask you to think about this afternoon is we're sharing a moment this afternoon, and fate has brought us together, and the wonderful people at Auto Care Association. And I'm going to challenge you to set a goal as a result of this webinar, that what you're going to do differently as you think about yourself and your career and your aspirations. And one of my favorite words, your passion. What really excites you and really what gets you out of bed in the morning. I ask you to reflect, and I'm going to ask you, and I hope you take some notes, to think about what your career goals are and tie those into what your passion is, because that will absolutely drive your brand. So I want you to set goals. I want you to write the goals down, and I encourage you, I implore you to hold yourself accountable for those goals. So with that, let's get started. I'll go through some of these slides, okay? That's my background. And then in my book I wrote a year ago, I'm a strong believer in the human touch. We live in a high-tech world. It will continue to get more technical. But the clients that I work with in my recruiting business and the people that I coach as an executive coach, the industry is looking for people that have people skills. They're looking for people that know how to communicate. They're looking for individuals that know how to collaborate, to work well with others. And I ask you to hone those skills and also to hone your listening skills, because that'll make you a better contributor. And as I talked about, introspection is when you look inside yourself and take a personal inventory and think about, what your strengths are and what you want to develop and what you want to improve upon as a professional. Because no matter how good any of us are, and I know the people on the call today are very talented and bright and educated folks, but all of us, if we're honest, and we look that person in the mirror, we all have things that we can improve upon. And that's what I do when I write my own goals. I carry my goals with me when I'm on an airplane sometime. I pull them out, I look at them, and I give myself a grade, and I hold myself accountable, because at the end of the day, you and I in life can fool a lot of people. But the mortal sin, or whatever that is when we fool ourselves. And I hope that none of us want to do that, because each day is a gift, and each day we should take advantage of that gift by making a contribution and using the talents that we've been given. The best part of you is you, and I'd like you to reflect a little bit this afternoon, and I'm not trying to get too heavy on a Wednesday afternoon in April, but think about and ponder this. What inspires you? What really, really inspires you? And if you think about, we've all had jobs that we have that was work. I mean, I worked my way through college, in my undergrad working in a factory in Toledo, Ohio, building transmissions for Chevrolet, and it was work. I mean, it did take a lot of skill once they trained you, and I aspired to do more. That's why I continued my education, you know. And then motivation is where we really reach inside ourselves and say, okay, how good can I really be? Because that's part of your brand. And the other thing is, when I interview people, I'm amazed at all levels of folks that I interview, they really don't know how to tell their story. When I ask them what are their strengths, when I ask them what they really need to work on as an individual, both personally and professionally, many, many times the answers are not crisp, the answers are not well thought out. And what people are looking for today, and this is your brand, is not only the fact that you're technically competent, but also what is that differential that you're going to bring to any company that you work with? What is that personality? What is that juice? What is that energy? What is that enthusiasm? What is that magic that you're going to bring to make my organization better? And if you think about why companies hire individuals, they hire them to bring creative approaches. They hire them for a different point of view. They hire them to help enhance the culture. So the more you look inside yourself and the more you know yourself, and I would ask you to take that time. And if you are interviewing, for God's sake, practice the interview before you get in front of someone. Don't wing it, because you know it's a one shot you're going to get. So I want you to think about what inspires you, and we see inspiration around us, you know, every day, where people do things above and beyond what maybe a so-called ordinary person will do. I happen to live in New England, and a few years ago, we had the Boston bombing, and I was in the Northwood University down in Florida in a restaurant, Italian restaurant, and the television came on, and they showed the Boston bombing. And what was incredible is people ran towards the bomb instead of away from the bombing to help those that were injured. That's a true sense of inspiration. And part of your leadership role should be part of your role as a human being, in my opinion, which you can disagree with me, is to inspire others by who you are and what your brand is. You know, what I say in this slide here is I want you to be the real you. Don't try to be somebody else. Be authentic. And, you know, that's what's the richness of life, in my opinion, is that we're all different. And I love to be surrounded with people with different backgrounds, different ages, different ethnic groups, different genders, because that's the richness of life. That's the richness of organizations. So be who you are, because who you are is neat. Who you are is cool. You're one of a kind. And as I said earlier, I want you to write down your long-term career goals. And, you know, that no one's going to help you guide your career as much as you are. And I'll talk about mentoring in a minute. But if you don't spend time thinking about where you want to go, the years will go by, trust me. And you'll go to work every day, but you will not have that fulfillment or that satisfaction of really chasing something that's really, really important to you. So, and maybe, if I may, I would ask you maybe to write down what your brand is. What do you bring to an organization that you work with today? I always submit that the organization that has the best people win. And I want you to be in that category. And your company's looking for that from you. You know, I talk about mentoring, which is something near and dear to my heart, because if I think back my career when I started in the 70s in this aftermarket at Monroe Auto Equipment, before mentoring was even mentioned or a word, I had a bunch of folks that helped me, identified the fact that they thought I had talent. They taught me the aftermarket. They took an interest in me, and they would not let me fail. And I owe those people an awful lot. And I try to carry that on today and pay it forward with the people that I touch. You know, and look in your organization, or even look outside the organization at people, you know, in the automotive aftermarket in the auto care industry, and then you identify somebody who say, gee, that's a position I would like to have someday. And seek that person out and talk to that person and say, you know, tell me how you got where you are today. What were the success factors? What did you encounter? What did it take? And trust me, they will be delighted and enthusiastic to take the time to share that with you, because frankly, we all like to tell our story. And in that process, I want you to be who you are, be yourself, and speak your own words and not someone else's, and don't be a carbon copy of someone else. And be who you are and who you're meant to be. You know, I always say to folks that at the end of our careers, the people that have the least regrets win. And what I'm trying to do this afternoon is challenge you to make sure you minimize your regrets and maximize your happiness and your peace of mind and feeling good about what you have done and what you will continue to do. Because the work ethic today in the aftermarket, we all spend a lot of hours at work, and even with technology making information quicker, but you know, many times I'll hear CEOs when I go to different companies, when they talk to their employees, they'll say we have to do more with less. And you've all heard that, I'm sure. That being said, we're going to spend more time at work than we do with the people we love. And so that being the reality that we're living with today, and I suspect that will continue in the global competition, global marketplace, then, you know, that's more than ever important that you put yourself in a role where you like to do what you do, and you wake up excited to go to work. Not every day, because no job is perfect, but you put yourself in a position where you have more good days than bad days. As I say here, you're the CEO. You're the chairman of the board of your brand. What you do 24/7 represents you. Maybe you haven't. I have witnessed people at Apex or people at corporate meetings that after the dinner, after the cocktail parties, they do things they regret the next day. And I'm not saying that, you know, that I'm a perfect human being, because I'm not. But all I'm saying, what you do is going to be your image. When people watch you, people listen to you, people are observing you, and you may not even be aware of it. And then if you throw in LinkedIn or Facebook, I have clients, before they'll hire somebody, they'll go on the Facebook and see what's posted. They'll go on LinkedIn to see. And they may or may not like what they see, and that may affect how they're going to, or how hire or not hire that person. How do you get ahead in life? How do you get ahead in industry? This is not a popular statement. You ask for more work. If you want to grow and you want to be challenged, ask for stretch assignments. Go in and talk to your leader, talk to your manager, and say, I'd like to be involved in this project. I'd like to be involved in the launch of a new product. I'd like to be involved in inventory analysis. I'd like to be involved in signing new customers. Whatever that stretch assignment may be, because then you'll get noticed. And you know, work is a four-letter word, but if you know who you are from a branding standpoint, if you push yourself to be all you can be, if you outwork your peer group, you will get noticed, you will get promoted, you'll get rewarded. Again, it depends what your value system is. It depends what you represent and what's important to you. As I said earlier in this conversation, I would implore you to learn how to tell your brand story. Learn how to tell your career story. When companies hire you, or companies promote you, they promote the entire person. It's not just the work individual, it's the private individual. And so they're looking for that total person that they can put into a leadership position. And the more you can tell them who you are and who you're not, the more you'll support your brand story. And then I talk about intelligence wins. In other words, everyone on the phone call today has an IQ, and the challenge I would submit to all of us is how much of it do we use? And we can all get into a rut. We can get into a routine where every day seems to be the same. We're not challenged. We get comfortable, which is okay to be comfortable. But what I want you to do is again, use the intellect that you've been gifted to have and make that contribution to the company and to yourself. Learn the business. This is a complex industry that we all work in. I love the automotive aftermarket. I love the auto care industry. We are in, real quick story, a couple years ago I was on a plane out of Chicago. A gentleman sat next to me. He was having a bad day, two cell phones. And he and I start talking, and he said, "John, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm in the automotive aftermarket." And I tried to explain it to him. He was a bankruptcy lawyer. And finally I said, I can't do this on a short plane ride. I said, we're in the freedom business. What our industry does is we keep cars and trucks on the road 24/7 so that the American public and the international public can go to work, can go to church, can go to synagogue, can go to soccer games, baseball games, and that's what we do. We provide the products at the right time, at the right price, at the right location, and that's the business for it. Learn that business. And life is a team sport. Most of us do not get ahead because we're so brilliant. We get ahead because other people help us. So learn how to work well with others. And again, because of technology, maybe sometime we're on the computer more days than we're in front of people. But people skills, in my humble opinion, will still be the differential for successful leaders today and for successful leaders going forward. So hone those skills. I talk about following your passion and being prepared for an interview, being professional. Watch what you write in an email. Watch what you say in meetings. And present yourself as positively as you know how. And attitudes are contagious. If you're having a bad day, talk to someone that they can help you change. When I have bad days too, in all candor, talk. You change the mood, because attitudes do not sell well in our industry. In fact, they don't sell in any industry. And check your attitude. Think about the things you're in control of in your life. Can you control the weather in Chicago? Can you control the traffic in California? Can you control the mood of the organization any given day? You may be able to influence it. When you peel that onion back, the thing that you're in control of 100% of the time is your attitude. And every day you wake up, you have a choice. That's part of your branding. And every day I wake up, I thank God for the day. Make the decision. Today is going to be a good day. I'm going to be in a webinar with Auto Care. I'm working with Katie, who's been helpful in the seminar today. A very professional young lady, and I'm honored to do that. My father, who came from Italy, taught me to have a strong work ethic. Said, "John, if you're getting paid, you do the best job you know how, because it's your personal pride. And if you don't do a good job, your boss may or may not be aware of it, but you'll be aware of it. So have a strong work ethic and have a positive attitude." So I guess, Katie, I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions.
Great. For all the attendees, go ahead and submit your questions. I've received a few so far, so I guess without putting you on the spot here, can you give us an example of can you tell your story in 2 minutes like you would in a...
Yes, reframe that again. Tell me again, please.
So can you tell your story in like your, some people call it an elevator speech, like your short 2-minute brand?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to. I love the question. The question is, what is my elevator speech? Okay, my elevator speech is, my whole life I've had a passion to work with people and to help them reach their potential. As a result, most of my career have been either in human resources or sales and marketing. I happen to be passionate about automobiles, and as a result, I made the choice to stay within the automotive aftermarket, the auto care industry, which has been very, very good to me. And if you join your organization, I will tell you I will bring creativity, enthusiasm, integrity, and strong work ethic. And I have strong educational background and strong references. When do I start?
That's great. That sounds really good. At Yang, like within the Yang networking group, part of a lot of what we do is networking, given the name. So can you give us tips on how to stand out at networking events?
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, when I go to Vegas every year, if you go to those cocktail parties, you know, sometimes literally, and I'm not exaggerating, there's thousands of people. There's thousands of people in a room. You've all seen that, right? And what I do is I look around, and I try to practice what I preach. Okay? I look around for somebody who's standing by themselves, and it's either the first time they've been to Vegas for Apex. You know, usually that's the case, or whatever the case may be, and I go up to them and introduce myself. And I ask them their background, why are they coming to the show, and many times, and I'm not saying I'm the only one, but many times I'm the only one that talks to that person. And what a better way to get a connection, and I built relationships that way. You know, so and it's even at dinners where you see when they have lunches at leadership or whatever. And sometimes there's a table and only one person, not deliberately, but just because the person came in later, and they're all, you know what I'm saying, there's a table of 8, and there's no room at the end of the tables, the person sits by themselves. I'll excuse the people I'm with and say, I'm not trying to be rude, but the lady's over there by herself, I want to go over and sit with her if she doesn't mind, or him, and introduce myself. It's just I think it's a sensitivity, because none of us like to be by ourselves. Well, you know, I like to be myself sometimes, but it's a sensitivity to say, I care, how can I get to know you, and what do we have in common? I think those are some of the things. The other thing, Katie, is listening. And I talked about that briefly this afternoon, is that the more I know about you, the better network we're going to develop. And so if you can hone, people can hone and practice, not hearing, I'm talking about really, really listening. And if I listen to someone long enough, I'll know what their passions are, I'll know what their hot buttons are, I'll know what their interests are, and that'll start the foundation of a network. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's great advice. And something you said led into another question. How do you keep track of all the people you meet? What are your tricks of the trade?
Well, you know, I love these questions. First of all, you know, we all exchange business cards, right? And when I come back, usually what I do, if I go back to the room like 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'll send that person a quick email and say, I was delighted to meet you at the Auto Care cocktail party, and we have a lot in common, and when the show is over, I'd like to follow up, and then they put them in my system, and that's what I do. I gave a talk about a month ago in LA on leading in the 21st century in front of 600 people, and I probably got over 70 cards, business cards, and I'm connected with them right now. But I follow up, and then I write articles, and so what I do is I put them on my email list, and I send articles out that I write, and so that there's a reason for that. I get feedback, and so we have a common interest. So those are some of the things I do. I think, how many of us get business cards at these meetings, and then they either go to cleaners, or we throw them out, or we forget where we put them? Don't you think that's true, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. So your system, you just immediately put them in your contacts?
Yep, that's the first thing I do. Same day I get them, I put them in my contact list. Yeah.
Great. Do you have like a note system or anything that helps you keep track?
Well, no, the email does, because it's fresh on the same day. In other words, like you and I got to know each other over the last 2 days, right? I mean, and so what is fresh in my mind, and then I send the email, and it goes in my system. Pretty good memory of folks. And so that's what I'll put notes in my email list and on my LinkedIn note. But that's what I do. Yeah, I might add some notes, but it's usually the email that I track.
That's great. Do you have any tips? A lot of our members are of the millennial generation, so do you have any tips for millennials speaking with older generations? What can we do to be better communicators?
Boy, that's 2 years ago, I did a seminar in Vegas with Ron Rossi on millenniums and the whole notion of their effect on the aftermarket with Tim Nash, who's a Dr. Nash from Northwood. And I think it's a two-way street because I also work with non-millenniums that I think first of all, it's if you can find, well, let me back up. Trust is the basis of any relationship. And yes, the millenniums see things a little bit differently than my generation. And that's okay. That's okay. And I guess if I were a millennium, I guess I would find a way, if you trust your leader, if you trust the manager that you work with, to find a way to have a conversation to say, you know, let me tell you my point of view on well, let's talk about how we can enhance our communication. And I think any leader would welcome that because it's a positive. It's a positive. Most relationships fail because personal and professional because of a lack of communication and a lack of trust, which go hand in hand. And so, you know, I've managed millenniums, and it's not a good or bad thing. It's just different, and I happen to like it. I mean, and I think it's the non-millenniums have to do a better job of being more clear on their expectations because, and this is a generalization, but if I'm not clear and I have a millennium working with me on what a particular report is due, that millennium will make that decision to say, well, when I get to it, I'll get to it. Not because they don't want to get the job done, but because I was not specific on what my expectations are. So I think it has to be some communications between the way you see the world and the way the non-millenniums see the world. And again, if we harken back to my earlier conversation, I think when I interview millenniums, I make doggone sure we spend some time talking about that because I ask them, what do you expect of someone that's going to report to? And by then, I've already interviewed the person they're going to report to, so that I can see if there's a match between what the millennium is seeking from a style standpoint and the style of the person they're going to report to. Because otherwise, if it's not a fit, there's going to be difficulty. Because there's been a lot of articles written about the millenniums where your generation, confidentiality doesn't mean what it meant to me when I started in the mid-'70s. Confidentiality was confidential. Today, whatever you want to find out, you go on the web and you find it. You go on the internet and you find it, right? And so when you say to somebody this is confidential, well, it may be or it may not be. So I mean, the premise is let's have a common foundation of expectations, communications, accountability, trust level. I think that's where it's at. I mean, millenniums are smart. They're technically off the charts vis-a-vis my generation. They're inquisitive. What more do you want, right? Now, again, they're going to challenge the boss. I happen to love to be challenged. I love it when somebody comes to my office and say, John, I really think we should rethink this. I think I have a better idea. I'll say, lay it on me. Give me all you have. Now, some bosses, again, it's how it's presented. If they come in and tell me I'm dumb and old, well, we're going to have another problem because I'm a Sicilian, you know. But it's how it's presented, so I think it falls on both parties to find a common ground to talk about in a supportive way, in a trustful way, to build that relationship. Does that help?
Yes, that was great. While we're talking about millennials, we have another question related to the younger workforce. So what is your best suggestion on how to overcome the negative perception of youth equaling inexperience?
You say youth and inexperience?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you overcome the youth and inexperience? I think it's energy. I think, you know, companies are looking for folks that have energy and are hungry to learn and are hungry to make a contribution, you know, and be persistent. In other words, when I interview people, and I'll tell them after, many times it's a phone interview, then I'll ask them to call me like a week from now on a Thursday afternoon, and it's not just millennials, it's every age group. If that individual doesn't call me back on Thursday, what are they telling me? They're telling me it's really not that, they're really not that interested in that position. And so, I mean, that again, that's about your note-taking. I mean, that's noted. So be prepared and know all you can know about the organization. Go on the web, find out the value proposition, find out the products, find out the success of the company, find out the history of the company, find out how they go to market. And when you get in front of that person interview, and one of the interview questions is, why do you want to work for this company? Then you'll be able to articulate that. And then they may say to you in different words, why would I want to hire you? Because I bring intellect, I bring enthusiasm, I bring work ethic, I bring dependability, I bring creativity, I bring technical skills, I bring a hunger to learn. Because the only way you get experience, that's an age-old, you know, the chicken or the egg, is somebody has to give you that opportunity. And when people are professional and positive and persistent with me, I overlook the lack of experience, and I'll put my neck out to a client to say, you really ought to hire this person because they're all over this job. They want this job. They want this job. They can taste this job. And most of the time, I'm successful. So, you know, make sure you have your story, your branding. Make sure you know why you're different than the other person interviewing for that job. Follow up, follow up, follow up. I still send letters to people in case anybody on the line forgets what a letter is. When I get good service on a letter line, I send a letter to the chairman of the board at Delta with the person's name. Yes, I send an email. Yes, I take the surveys. If you interview for a job, yes, you're going to send a nice email to the person you interview with. Also send them a note in the mail. Most people don't do that. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I tell you that makes a difference because it puts you in front of that person again, and your competition is not doing that. And then follow up, not where you're a pain in the neck, but follow up on a timely basis and be emphatic about, I really would like this opportunity, here's why, and that person you'll get that person's attention.
I think that's really great advice, and I think we hit on a hot topic, so because we're getting a lot of questions still about millennials. So you hit on what you think that the older generations need to be more clear on expectations to the millennials, but what is the older generation looking for in the millennial?
Well, you know, that's a complex, you know, that's a complex issue. I mean, like with any of us, right? I mean, as I said earlier, we're trying to do more with less. They want dependability. I mean, I've managed hundreds. I mean, when I was at CarQuest, we had 11,000 employees. You can imagine that. And when you have somebody you work with who gets the job done 99% of the time, you put your head on the pillow at night. If you think about that person, you think, thank you, thank you, thank you. Dependability. I mean, that's the key. Because there's so much to get done. We have to serve that customer. We have to get that part there on time with quality and price and safety. And so what the millennials can do, and I mean, is dependability. I mean, I think that dependability is the key. If that answers your question, but I think it's like no different than any relationship. If I can't depend on somebody, that puts more burden on me. And in organizations, there's always a group of people that are, you know, they're the A students, if you will, the A employees. You got the Bs, you got some of the Cs, and the Cs may or may not make the deadline, and that causes stress. So I think dependability, intelligence, you know, little things like showing up, right? I mean, that's a biggie. And being on time, that's a biggie. And reports due on Thursday, maybe you get it in on Wednesday. That, if you do those things, you'll be noticed. Does that help?
Sure, yeah, that's great advice. Another question came in. As an owner of a multi-generation business, how do I encourage collaboration between older established employees who may feel threatened by the younger employees looking to make their mark and those younger employees?
I think, and that, again, I love these questions. I think you give them a common cause. I think you give them a common objective, a common project, if you will. I think by doing that, they all have skin in the game. And I've done that in my career, where I've taken a 60-year-old person and put them with a 24-year-old person and say, I want you to put your creative minds together, collaborate on this, and compile a report. And I'm going to have both of you present the report at the next executive committee meeting, and you're going to present it. I'm not going to present it. And you're going to get the credit. I'm not going to get the credit because it's your work, not my work. And I'm going to give you visibility. I'm going to give you, it's a small business, but even then, I mean, if you harken back to what I talk about with pride, the older worker and the younger worker have pride, and they don't want to embarrass themselves. So if it has to be something meaty, and I've even done it on charitable things where when I was at CarQuest, we raised money for the Special Olympics, and we formed employee committees, and I mixed them up by age and gender and race and creed and all those wonderful things. And they all got impassioned by the fact that we're really going to help these young folks who participate in the Special Olympics. And we were giving shirts out when the kids ran, and we had committees, and we cooked hot dogs for the kids after the event. And all of a sudden you look down and you would see everybody working together. The 19-year-old kid who was just got out of high school was picking orders in the warehouse, and the 72-year-old warehouse manager, and they're acting like they're best friends and have their arms around each other. So I think if you can give them some kind of, again, meaningful, I call that a shared experience, that all of a sudden the differences go away. It's an interest. My brother was in Vietnam, and he said, John, when you're in a foxhole in Vietnam, it doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, black, white, Christian, Jewish, atheist, from Mississippi or Wisconsin. All that matters is we all need each other to get through the night in this foxhole. He said all of a sudden all those differences fall off the table. Now that's a common experience that I don't want anybody to go through. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when we share those things, it's an awareness to say, these people are a lot more like me than I thought they were. And we have more in common than I thought we did. And this younger generation and this older generation is pretty damn cool, pardon my language. But I think that's what it's all about. And I feel very, very, very strong about that. We've got to put people in a position where we can share positive things together.
That's great. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We have another question. In your opinion, what is the best way to be your own motivator? How do you motivate yourself to be your own brand?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think if you sit down, and I really hope this afternoon that I'm touching some people to take some positive action for themselves and their own brand. I mean, that's my payoff today. If I touch some people this afternoon to do that, I think that I'm going to feel good about this opportunity. But I think the first thing you got to do is sit down and say, what's important to me, and what am I willing to do to get it? And I'm not trying to come across, pat myself on the back. I'm just saying, when I was working in the factory and going to school part-time, I said to myself, and nothing against factory workers, please. I said to myself, John, I want you to get out of this factory, and you've got to finish your education, because I had to pay for it 100%. My dad didn't have any money. And I worked, and I worked, and I worked. And I wasn't going to give up on that. I mean, there was times I wanted to quit and say, the heck with it. And so I held myself accountable. And as I said, if you write down your objectives to say, this is what I really want to do. It's no different maybe than you fall in love and with a person and you say, I really want to marry that person. That's a goal. You're motivated, and you act accordingly, and you pursue that person, and you get married to them. I mean, that's motivation. And so the first thing you have to do is say, what's important to me? What is really, really important to me? Do I want to be a warehouse manager? Do I want to be a sales vice president, a sales director? Do I want to run marketing? Whatever that case may be. And then I talk to myself about it. I'm in the car, I talk to myself about these things. But I think once you establish what you really want to achieve, and you hold yourself accountable, you'll be motivated. You'll be motivated to do that. I mean, if you think about the Olympians, I have a young lady who lives in my neighborhood in Rhode Island. She's an ice skater, and she missed winning a medal at the Olympics by fractions of a second. She practiced 7 days a week. 7 days a week. Can you imagine? She practiced on Christmas. She's going to go back again. Now you talk about motivation. Her parents are not forcing her to do it. She's a young lady. But she set that goal, and she said to me, John, I want to get a goal. I want to get a medal. And I said, God bless you. Now that's an extreme case, right? But she's holding herself accountable. And so it starts with what's your goal? What is your brand? What's your hot button? What's your passion? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And what are you willing to do to get it? What price are you willing to pay legitimately with value? What are you willing to do to reach that objective? Then you'll be motivated. It's people that play golf. They say, I want to take 3 or 4 strokes off my game. They go to driving range. The Masters will be on starting tomorrow. Those guys practice every day. Tiger Woods out there trying to see if he can win another one. But those are extreme examples. Maybe don't apply to you and I on the call today, but I think that's an example where they set the standard high, and they live that every day. And so it starts with motivation is a personal choice. I always challenge companies to say of the resource that you have in your company, the one, in my opinion, that makes a difference are your employees, are your people. And part of leadership is, are you really putting them in a position where they can give you the best contribution they can give? And you influence that, you affect that by your communication style, by your interest, by your expectations, by feedback, both positive and developmental. So people know where they stand, because I submit people want to do a good job. It's up to leadership to help them do a good job and reward them appropriately for doing a good job. So motivation is a personal choice. And, as I said, you don't want to cheat yourself. If you have ability and don't use it, what a waste. I mean, if you have talent, we probably all have friends on this call that are bright as heck, that have the ability to do anything they want to do, but they haven't done it. That saddens me. And so if anybody's on a call today that has aspirations, I ask it to be, and then the other thing to be motivated, and have other people hold you accountable for that motivation. If you set a goal to say, I'm going to run 3 days a week, and you run with a buddy of yours, a friend of yours, then tell that person, if I beg off on the 3rd day, you have every right to get on my case and say, wait a minute, John, you committed that you and I are going to run 3 days a week. And so that'll help you stay focused on it. Or tell your spouse, tell your husband, tell your wife that what's important to you, and tell them they have a right to get on your case if you don't deliver. So I think, again, I can't force anybody on the call today to learn. What I'm trying to do is create a climate where people say, this makes sense. I'm going to endorse some of this. I'm going to embark on some of this. That's a choice. Motivation is a choice. And maybe I gave you more than I asked for, but I hope that's helpful.
No, I think that was really, well, it's inspiring to me, so it's good to hear. We have one last question that came in. what's the biggest difference between being a manager and being a leader?
Yeah, there's a big difference. I mean, that's probably a whole different webinar. But you know, managers manage things. They manage projects and deadlines and budgets and inventory and inventory turns and all those things that are very, very relevant and very, very important. A leader sets the tone. A leader helps to establish the culture. The culture is the value systems, the behaviors that are sought. A leader is a visionary. A leader says, here's where we are today, and here's where we want to go longer term. A leader paints the picture. He paints the landscape. He paints the picture. He engages people to let them know where they fit in the organization. And so he sets the tone. He sets the standard, or he or she, and the vision, the long-term vision and the short-term vision. Now, he also, obviously, he or she also manages the things I mentioned earlier, but there's a distinct difference between a leader and a manager. A manager is more short-term thinking, which is okay. A leader is more long-term thinking, seeks out more creativity. And while I'm on that, how many people on the line today seek out ideas from the employees in their company? How many employees come forward and say, I think we can improve this process. We can improve this customer relation. We can improve this delivery. We could take cost out of this. We can enhance whatever the case may be. People in your company have ideas. For God's sake, let them know it's okay to have ideas. Seek those ideas out, because that's the only way we're going to win in global competition. The only way we're going to win is having the best people in the organization who come in with fire in their bellies, ideas and enthusiasm and passion. And that's what leaders do. And people on the phone today, you all work different places. I bet you could tell me the people you work for, who was a leader and who was a manager, right? And so if you think about that, I mean, Rudy Giuliani, when 9/11, he was the mayor of New York City, and God forbid we all remember that day, he was a leader. He pulled New York together. And I read his book, and after 9/11, he put all the names of the people who died in the Twin Towers in the conference room on the wall. And he gathered his whole staff in the conference room. And he said to them, somebody from my administration will go to each of these funerals, because we're going to represent New York City and let the families know that New York City cares. And so everybody had to sign up for different funerals. And he said, on any given day, he may go to 3 or 4 funerals, if you can imagine, the people that perished in the Twin Towers. Now that was leadership in a crisis, because he set the vision of how New York was going to come back, and they've tried, and how they were going to show that they care about people that lost a loved one. That's way, way above managing. That was leadership.
Well, with that, Dr. John, I want to thank you for your time today. I think we've all learned a great deal, and we appreciate you sharing your insight. For everyone who's attending today, if you know anyone who didn't make it, or archives of all of our webinars will be on the new Yang Connect site. And then I'm going to ask Dr. John to go to the last slide for a clip or information on our next webinar. Will be May 19th. With Brian Cruikshank from the University of the Aftermarket. So he's going to be doing a presentation on distribution, past, present, and future. So thank you all for attending, and have a great day.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.